What if one of the most ordinary cars in the world was quietly being transformed into something you were never meant to expect? Something that looks familiar, but drives like it came from a completely different future. Because that's exactly what's happening right now with the next generation compact sedan that the entire world thinks it already understands. And if even half of what's being developed becomes reality, the road ahead is about to change in a way most people are not ready for. You've probably seen this name 1,000 times. You might have even sat inside one. Or maybe you've ignored it completely because it always seemed too normal. But that's the trap. The most underestimated cars are often the ones that evolve the most aggressively when nobody is paying attention. And this next version might be the biggest shift in its entire history. Not a redesign, not a refresh, something much deeper. Something that changes what this kind of car is supposed to be. Because the future version of the Toyota Corolla is no longer just being shaped to survive the competition. It's being shaped to dominate an entirely new era of driving. But here's the strange part. Most people won't notice it at first. They'll think it's just another sedan passing by. Until they get closer. Until they look again. And by then, it might already be too late to ignore what this car has become. Now imagine this. You're standing on a street corner. Traffic is moving slowly. Nothing unusual. Then a new compact sedan rolls past you. At first glance, it feels familiar, but something is off. The shape is tighter, sharper, almost like it was carved by wind instead of designed by humans. The front end doesn't just look modern, it looks calculated. Like every line has a purpose beyond aesthetics. And in that moment, you realize something important. This isn't evolution anymore. This is intent. And that's where everything begins to shift. Because the next generation of this car isn't trying to blend in. It's trying to redefine what blending in even means. But why now? Why would a car known for simplicity suddenly start pushing design this far? The answer isn't just styling, it's survival. The entire compact sedan world is changing faster than ever. Drivers want more technology, more efficiency, more personality, and somehow, more affordability at the same time. That combination is almost impossible, unless something is willing to change everything underneath the surface. And that's where things start getting interesting. Because as you move closer to this upcoming model, the design language begins to reveal a different philosophy entirely. Advanced driver assistance systems are expected to become more intelligent, more predictive, and more responsive. Lane control, adaptive cruise behavior, emergency braking systems, pedestrian detection. But the real evolution isn't in what these systems do. It's in how early they do it. Faster reaction times, better environmental understanding, more confidence in complex traffic situations. Almost like the car is beginning to think a few steps ahead. And that raises a bigger question. If a compact sedan starts predicting danger before the driver reacts, who is really in control? That thought doesn't need an answer, but it changes how you see everything that comes next. Because reliability remains untouched. And that's the silent foundation holding everything together. Decades of trust. Millions of drivers. A reputation built not on excitement, but consistency. And now that foundation is being used to support something far more ambitious. A car that doesn't abandon its identity, but expands it. Slightly improved handling, more stable cornering, better suspension tuning that smooths out imperfections without removing. Road feel completely. And this is where the emotional shift happens. Because suddenly, the car doesn't feel like a compromise anymore. It feels complete. Not extreme, not luxurious, but balanced in a way that starts to make sense for almost everyone. And here's the final question that ties everything together. What happens when one of the most practical cars in the world stops trying to be just practical and starts trying to be everything at once? That's the direction this new generation is pointing toward. A design that feels more modern. A cabin that feels more intelligent. A powertrain that feels more flexible. And a driving experience that quietly pushes beyond what people expect from this category. But the most interesting part isn't what it becomes. It's what it represents. Because if this evolution succeeds, it won't just change one car, it could reset expectations for every compact sedan that follows. And maybe that's the real story here. Not a redesign, not an upgrade, but a reminder that even the most familiar names in the automotive world can still surprise everyone. When the next chapter begins, the front fascia is expected to feel wider, more grounded. Not aggressive in a loud way, but in a controlled, confident way. The headlights are no longer just functional units. They're becoming signatures. Thin, precise, almost like they're watching the road instead of simply lighting it. And the body? It doesn't just sit on the road anymore. It leans into it. Slightly lower stance, cleaner airflow lines. Surfaces that look like they were designed to reduce resistance without ever announcing it. And then comes the side profile. This is where perception starts to break, because the proportions begin to shift towards something sportier, even if the car itself is still practical at its core. Longer visual stance, more planted presence. Subtle hints that this is no longer just a commuter machine. But here's where a question starts to form. If a practical sedan starts looking this dynamic, what happens when you actually drive it? We'll get there. But first, something even more important is changing. The rear design. Because the back of a car is often where personality either collapses or becomes unforgettable. And in this case, the direction is clear. A wider light signature stretching across the trunk. A cleaner, more unified design language. Something that feels high-tech without trying too hard. Almost like the car is signaling its presence, even after it's already past you. But design is only the surface layer. And that's where the real transformation begins. Because the biggest shock in this new generation isn't what you see, it's what you experience inside. The moment you open the door, the philosophy changes. The cabin is no longer just a place to sit. It becomes an interface, a space designed around digital behavior, not mechanical tradition. A larger central display becomes the focal point, faster response, cleaner visuals, less clutter. But here's the subtle shift most people will miss. It's not about adding more technology. It's about removing distraction. Because modern drivers aren't just asking for features anymore. They're asking for clarity. And that's where the interior design starts to feel different. A cleaner dashboard layout, more intentional spacing, controls that feel fewer but smarter. And then there's the digital cluster, fully modernized, designed to reduce the gap between driver and information. Speed, navigation, assistance systems, all flowing together instead of competing for attention. But now comes a turning point. Because as comfort increases, so does expectation. Seats are expected to become more supportive for longer journeys. Cabin insulation is expected to improve significantly, reducing outside noise to a near background level. Even rear passengers are no longer ignored. Slightly improved legroom, better posture geometry, small changes that add up over time. And suddenly, something interesting happens. This stops feeling like a basic sedan and starts feeling like a scaled-down experience vehicle. But the real twist is still ahead. Because everything you've seen so far is only design and comfort. Now we move into the part that defines its identity for the next decade, performance. And this is where the story stops being predictable. The next generation is expected to lean heavily into hybrid evolution, not just for efficiency, but for balance. A refined system where a combustion engine and electric motor work together more seamlessly than before. The result isn't just lower fuel consumption, it's smoother behavior, stronger response in city driving, quieter operation at low speeds, and a more natural transition between power sources that most drivers won't even notice happening. But here's the real question. Can efficiency and excitement actually exist in the same car? That's the tension point. Because traditionally, compact sedans were forced to choose either fun or fuel economy, not both. But the direction of this new generation suggests that compromise might no longer be necessary. And then comes the rumor that changes everything. A plug-in hybrid possibility. Now suddenly, the conversation shifts. Short electric-only travel becomes possible. Daily commutes could become nearly silent. Fuel usage could drop even further for city drivers. And this is where the identity of the car begins to split into two worlds. One version for efficiency-focused drivers, another for those who want a bit more electric freedom. But the deeper implication is this. This isn't just about saving fuel anymore. It's about redefining how people interact with daily driving. And just when it feels like the transformation is complete, there's another layer. Safety. Because no modern car can evolve without it.